What would you do if you found a dying police officer in a blizzard who looked into your eyes and said, "Forget about me, save my partner, he's all I have left in this world"? That's exactly what happened to Navy SEAL veteran Axel Thompson when a routine supply run during Montana's worst blizzard in 50 years became the most heartbreaking rescue of his life. But what Officer Sarah Mitchell didn't know was that the choice she was asking Axel to make would reveal a conspiracy that had cost 3 police officers their lives, expose corruption that reached the highest levels of law enforcement, and prove that sometimes the strongest partnerships are the ones willing to die for each other. This is the true story of a blizzard that buried more than roads, a partnership that proved loyalty has no boundaries, and the moment when "ride with me" became the 3 words that would either save 2 heroes or honor their choice to die together. Where are you watching from right now? Drop your location in the comments. And if you believe that true partners never abandon each other, no matter the cost, hit that like button. You're going to need every bit of courage you have for this one. Now, let's begin. The blizzard that hit northwestern Montana in January wasn't just weather. It was a weapon of nature that had already claimed 6 lives and shut down every road for a 100-mile radius. Axel Thompson was making his weekly supply run to isolated ranches when the storm escalated from dangerous to deadly. But his thick, dark beard was crusted with ice, and his weathered military features showed the determination of someone who had survived worse conditions during his Navy SEAL years. "Scout Ranger Angel," he called to the Midnight Brotherhood over the howling wind. "Visibility's down to 0, but we've got 3 more families to check on before we can head home." The Brotherhood, now accompanied by Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, and Echo, had adapted their search and rescue skills to extreme weather operations, but even their supernatural detection abilities were being challenged by 60-mile-per-hour winds and temperatures that had dropped to 35 degrees F. That's when Ranger alerted to something that shouldn't have been possible in these conditions, a human scent trail that was fresh enough to follow despite the blizzard. "Ranger's got something," Axel announced to his team while checking his GPS coordinates. "Someone's out there in this storm." Following Ranger's lead through snowdrifts that reached chest high, the Midnight Brotherhood navigated toward what appeared to be an overturned police SUV half buried in snow against a cluster of pine trees. The vehicle had clearly been there for hours, maybe longer, with snow accumulation that suggested the occupants were either dead or dying from exposure. But as Axel approached the wreckage, he heard something that stopped his heart. The faint sound of someone talking to an animal in the reassuring tone that police officers used with their canine partners during crisis situations. "It's okay, Rex. Stay with me, boy. Help's coming. I promise, help's coming." Inside the overturned SUV, Axel found Officer Sarah Mitchell, a Montana State Police trooper in her early 30s, lying unconscious against the driver's side window with a severe head wound and clear signs of hypothermia. Beside her, equally trapped and injured, was Rex, a German Shepherd police dog whose back legs were pinned under collapsed metal, but whose intelligent amber eyes showed he was still fighting to stay conscious. "Officer Mitchell," Axel called through the broken window while assessing the rescue situation. "I'm Axel Thompson, search and rescue. Can you hear me?" Sarah's eyes opened slowly, struggling to focus, but when she saw Axel's face, her training took over despite her critical condition. "My partner," she whispered weakly, gesturing toward Rex. "He's hurt bad. Been trying to keep him warm, but I think his spine might be damaged." Axel quickly evaluated both victims and realized he was facing an impossible extraction scenario. The SUV's weight was pinning Rex's lower body, but any attempt to shift the vehicle in these blizzard conditions could cause it to roll completely, killing both occupants instantly. Moreover, both Officer Mitchell and Rex were suffering from severe hypothermia and would need immediate medical care to survive. But Axel could only safely extract one at a time given the unstable vehicle position and extreme weather conditions. "Officer, I need you to stay with me," Axel said while calculating extraction procedures. "What's your first name?" "Sarah," she replied, her voice growing weaker. "Sarah Mitchell. Montana State Police, 5 years on the force. Rex has been my partner for 3 years. He's the best cop I've ever worked with." But as Axel began planning the rescue operation, Sarah said something that changed everything about the situation. Thompson, I need you to promise me something, she said with the quiet authority of someone making their final official act as a police officer. If you can only save one of us, you save Rex. He's got more years left than I do, and he's a better cop than most humans I know. Axel looked at Rex, who despite his injuries was trying to move closer to Sarah, attempting to provide what comfort he could to his wounded partner. Ma'am, I'm not making that choice. We're getting both of you out of here. Look at me, Sarah said, her training overriding her physical condition. I'm dying. Internal bleeding, head trauma, probably don't have more than an hour even with medical care. But Rex could live 15 more years. He could save hundreds of lives. You make the right choice here. That's when Axel realized this wasn't just a vehicle accident in a blizzard. Looking more carefully at the SUV's damage pattern, he could see evidence of impact that suggested this wasn't weather-related. The vehicle had been deliberately forced off the road. Officer Mitchell, how did your vehicle end up here? Sarah's eyes sharpened with the focus that came from years of police training. We were investigating reports of drug trafficking through the northern routes. Rex detected something at the Morrison Ranch that wasn't supposed to be there. We were heading back to report when someone forced us off the road. Someone tried to kill you. Someone did kill me, Sarah replied quietly. They just didn't account for Rex trying to protect me or you showing up to witness what they did. As if to confirm her words, Axel heard the sound of vehicles approaching through the blizzard, vehicles that shouldn't have been able to navigate these roads in current conditions unless they knew exactly where they were going. Sarah looked at Axel with eyes that held 3 years of partnership with Rex and 5 years of police training. Mr. Thompson, they're coming back to make sure we're dead. You need to get Rex out of here before they arrive. The blizzard had just become the least dangerous thing about this rescue. The approaching vehicles were still 2 minutes away, but Axel Thompson had already made a decision that would defy both Sarah Mitchell's orders and the laws of physics. He wasn't choosing between them. Scout Ranger Angel, Axel commanded with the tactical precision that had served him through countless impossible operations. Defensive perimeter. Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo, emergency extraction, both victims, coordinated lift. Mr. Thompson, you don't understand, Sarah protested weakly. They have resources, equipment, and they know these roads. They're going to kill all of us if you don't. Officer Mitchell, Axel interrupted, his weathered military features hardened with the focus that came from years of refusing impossible orders. I'm a Navy SEAL. We don't leave anyone behind, and we sure as hell don't take orders from criminals. Working with speed that combined military training with years of search and rescue expertise, Axel began a vehicle stabilization procedure that would allow him to extract both Sarah and Rex without causing the SUV to shift. But it was Rex who provided the key to the solution. Despite his spinal injuries, the German Shepherd police dog somehow understood what Axel was attempting. Using his front legs, Rex began carefully repositioning himself to redistribute weight within the vehicle, creating enough space for Sarah to be moved without destabilizing the wreckage. He's helping you? Sarah whispered in amazement. Rex knows what you're trying to do. The Midnight Brotherhood coordinated around the rescue with precision that would have impressed emergency response teams. Scout and Ranger established early warning positions to monitor the approaching threat. Angel positioned herself to guide Axel's extraction route through the deep snow. Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, and Echo formed a living shelter around the crash site, using their bodies to block wind and create a thermal pocket that would help prevent further hypothermia in both victims. Sarah, Axel said while working to carefully extract her from the wreckage, I need you to tell me who's coming and what kind of firepower they have. Sergeant Mike Davidson and Deputy Tom Morrison, she replied, fighting to stay conscious as Axel lifted her free from the vehicle. They're part of a drug trafficking network that uses the northern ranches as distribution points. Rex detected over 50 kilos of pure cocaine hidden in hay bales at the Morrison Ranch. As Axel secured Sarah in thermal blankets and began the delicate process of extracting Rex, the full scope of the corruption became clear. How long has this been going on? At least 2 years. 3 other officers who got too close ended up dead in accidents. Car crashes, hunting mishaps, equipment failures. I was supposed to be the 4th. But Rex's extraction was complicated by his spinal injuries and the vehicle's precarious position. Any wrong move could either kill the dog or cause the SUV to collapse completely. That's when Sarah, despite her critical condition, provided the solution that saved her partner's life. "Rex, listen to me," she said in the command voice that had guided them through 3 years of police work. "Emergency extraction. Trust him. Ride with me." The phrase, "ride with me," had been their partnership signal for dangerous operations where Rex needed to follow Sarah's lead without question. Even injured and disoriented, Rex understood what his partner was asking him to do. The German Shepherd remained perfectly still while Axel carefully maneuvered him free from the wreckage, trusting completely in the partnership that had defined both their careers. Just as Axel successfully extracted Rex from the vehicle, the sound of approaching engines became loud enough to distinguish individual vehicles, 2 trucks with snow chains, moving with the confidence of people who knew exactly where they were going. "They're here," Sarah whispered. "Mr. Thompson, you need to know something about what you're facing. Davidson and Morrison aren't just corrupt cops. They're ex-military, special forces trained, and they have access to weapons that can outgun anything civilian search and rescue would carry." Axel looked at Sarah, a police officer who had been willing to die to protect her canine partner, and Rex, who despite his injuries was trying to position himself protectively beside his wounded handler. Then he looked at Scout, Ranger, Angel, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Theta, and Echo, who had formed a protective circle around the 2 victims and were showing the alert behavior that meant they were ready for whatever came next. "Officer Mitchell," Axel said with the quiet authority that had commanded respect in the most dangerous situations, "you and Rex spent 3 years protecting the people of Montana from criminals. Today, the Midnight Brotherhood is going to protect you from criminals. Consider this an official law enforcement partnership." The first truck appeared through the blizzard 50 yards away, its headlights cutting through the snow like searchlights looking for prey. But what Sergeant Davidson and Deputy Morrison didn't understand was that they were no longer hunting wounded prey. They were about to face 8 German Shepherds whose pack instincts had been refined by years of military and law enforcement training, coordinated by a Navy SEAL who specialized in impossible odds. The corrupt cops thought they were coming to clean up evidence. They were actually driving into a trap set by the most elite search and rescue team in Montana, a team that had just officially adopted 2 new members and was prepared to demonstrate why partnerships built on loyalty were stronger than partnerships built on corruption. Sarah looked at Rex, who despite his injuries was alert and ready to serve alongside his new pack. "You hear that, boy? We've got backup, real backup this time." Rex made the soft sound that meant understood and ready for action. The blizzard was about to become the least dangerous weather pattern in the area. What happened in the Montana blizzard over the next 40 minutes would become legendary in both law enforcement and military circles. 8 German Shepherds and 1 Navy SEAL demonstrating why loyalty-based partnerships always defeat corruption-based alliances. Sergeant Mike Davidson and Deputy Tom Morrison emerged from their trucks carrying military-grade weapons and night vision equipment, confident that they were dealing with a civilian rescue operation that had stumbled onto their crime scene. They were expecting to find 2 dying victims and maybe an amateur Good Samaritan they could eliminate quietly. Instead, they found themselves facing a coordinated tactical unit that had turned the blizzard into their operational advantage. "Sarah Mitchell and her mutt should be dead by now," Davidson called to Morrison over the wind. "We just need to confirm the bodies and plant some evidence that makes it look like they got lost in the storm." But Scout, Ranger, and Angel had been conducting surveillance on the approaching vehicles for 10 minutes, using military working dog techniques to track movement patterns, weapon signatures, and tactical positioning. When Davidson and Morrison reached the crash site, they found the overturned SUV exactly where they had left it. But no bodies, no survivors, and no evidence that anyone had been rescued. "Where the hell are they?" Morrison demanded, scanning the area with his night vision scope. That's when the Midnight Brotherhood launched the most coordinated law enforcement operation in Montana history. Alpha emerged from the snowdrifts behind Morrison with the silent precision of a military working dog trained in enemy detention. The surprise takedown was so fast and efficient that Morrison never had a chance to use his weapon. Simultaneously, Bravo and Charlie flanked Davidson from opposite directions, using the blizzard's natural cover to approach undetected. When Davidson turned to help his partner, he found himself facing two fully grown German shepherds whose tactical training had been perfected through years of high-stakes operations. But it was Delta and Echo who demonstrated the most sophisticated police work. Working together with coordination that would have impressed K-9 units nationwide, Delta immobilized Davidson's weapon while Echo secured the evidence needed to prove the drug trafficking conspiracy. Davidson's radio, which was still transmitting communications with other members of the criminal network. "Base, this is Davidson. We've got a problem at the crash site. Send backup to grid coordinates." Echo carefully extracted the radio and carried it to Axel, who was monitoring the entire operation while providing medical care to Sarah and Rex in a snow shelter the Brotherhood had constructed. "Sarah," Axel said, showing her the radio evidence, "your investigation just got the proof it needed to take down the entire network." But Sarah, despite her injuries, was focused on something more important than criminal evidence. She was watching Rex work alongside the Midnight Brotherhood with the coordination of a dog who had found his true calling. Despite his spinal injuries, Rex was providing tactical guidance to Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, and Echo, using the police training that had made him one of the most effective K-9 officers in Montana. "He's teaching them," Sarah realized. "Rex is showing your dogs police procedures, and they're teaching him search and rescue techniques. They're creating something new." The integration was extraordinary. Rex's law enforcement expertise combined with the Brotherhood's search and rescue capabilities was producing tactical solutions that exceeded what either specialty could accomplish alone. When Morrison attempted to escape through the deep snow, Rex guided Scout and Ranger in a pursuit pattern that cornered the corrupt deputy without causing injury, a perfect arrest procedure that maintained evidence integrity while ensuring public safety. When Davidson tried to destroy his phone containing evidence of the drug network, Charlie and Delta coordinated to preserve the device while Angel secured Davidson in a restraint position that prevented resistance without causing harm. "This isn't just backup," Sarah whispered to Axel as she watched the operation unfold. "This is the future of law enforcement, K-9 units working together with shared intelligence and coordinated tactics." But the real breakthrough came when Rex, despite his injuries, performed one final act that would seal the case against the entire drug trafficking network, using scent detection skills that had been refined through 3 years of partnership with Sarah. Rex guided Echo to Davidson's truck where 50 kilos of cocaine were hidden in specially designed compartments, evidence that proved the corruption extended far beyond 2 officers. "Rex just gave us everything we need to shut down the entire operation," Axel realized, studying the evidence. "Serial numbers, distribution routes, supplier connections. This is enough to arrest everyone from street dealers to whoever's running the operation." When Montana State Police backup finally arrived 3 hours later, they found a scene that would be studied in law enforcement academies for years to come. 2 corrupt officers in custody with overwhelming evidence of drug trafficking conspiracy. 1 injured but surviving police officer whose investigation had exposed the criminal network. 1 wounded but recovering K-9 officer whose police work had sealed the case. And 8 German shepherds who had just demonstrated that the strongest partnerships are those built on mutual respect, shared purpose, and the understanding that some bonds transcend species, training, and even life-threatening injury. Officer Mitchell, the arriving state police commander, said while reviewing the evidence, "Your investigation has uncovered the largest drug trafficking network in Montana history. How did you manage to apprehend the suspects and preserve the evidence under these conditions?" Sarah looked at Rex, who was resting comfortably beside her while Dr. Sarah Martinez treated his spinal injuries, then at Scout, Ranger, Angel, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, and Echo, who had formed their protective formation around both wounded officers. "Sir," Sarah replied, "I had the best backup in the world. A partnership that proved loyalty is stronger than corruption, courage is stronger than violence, and sometimes the best police work happens when good cops work together, regardless of whether they have 2 legs or 4. The corrupt network that had operated for years was dismantled in a single night, but more importantly, 2 new partnerships had been forged that would change law enforcement in Montana forever. Rex would recover from his injuries and continue serving alongside the Midnight Brotherhood in operations that combined police work with search and rescue. And Sarah Mitchell, would transfer to a new position as the coordinator of Montana's first multi-species law enforcement unit, a program that proved partnership, loyalty, and courage could overcome any form of corruption. The blizzard had buried more than roads. It had buried a criminal network that thought loyalty could be bought and courage could be intimidated. 1 year after that blizzard night, the Montana Multi-Species Law Enforcement Unit had become the most successful crime-fighting team in the state's history. But it was the partnership between Rex and the Midnight Brotherhood that had redefined what law enforcement could accomplish. Officer Sarah Mitchell stood at the podium of the Montana Law Enforcement Academy, addressing a packed auditorium of police officers, canine handlers, and search and rescue coordinators from across the country who had come to study the revolutionary techniques developed by the Brotherhood. "Ladies and gentlemen," Sarah began, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had survived corruption, betrayal, and a blizzard that should have killed her. "I want to tell you about the night I learned that the strongest partnerships aren't built on training protocols or official procedures. They're built on the promise that no one gets left behind." Behind her, Rex sat at perfect attention beside Scout, Ranger, Angel, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, and Echo. The 9 dogs had formed a bond that transcended traditional K-9 operations, creating a unit that combined police work, search and rescue, and tactical operations with unprecedented effectiveness. 18 months ago, Sergeant Davidson and Deputy Morrison thought they could silence a police investigation by forcing my partner Rex and me off the road during a blizzard. They thought corruption backed by violence would always defeat integrity backed by loyalty. Sarah gestured to Axel Thompson, whose thick dark beard and weathered military features showed the quiet confidence of someone who had turned an impossible rescue into a legendary partnership. They didn't account for a Navy SEAL who refuses to choose between innocent lives, or 8 German Shepherds who understand that the strongest pack is one that protects everyone worth protecting. The audience, hardened law enforcement professionals who had seen every form of criminal behavior, listened with the respect reserved for operations that had achieved the impossible. Over the past year, the Montana Multi-Species Unit had solved 43 major crimes, rescued 67 missing persons, and dismantled 5 criminal organizations that had operated for years without detection. But their success wasn't measured just in statistics. It was measured in lives transformed and partnerships that had evolved beyond anything law enforcement had ever seen. Rex's spinal injuries from the crash should have ended his career, Sarah continued, reaching down to stroke her partner's head. Instead, working with the Midnight Brotherhood taught him new techniques that made him more effective than he'd ever been as a traditional police dog. Rex had indeed transformed. His injury had forced him to develop different approaches to police work, but those adaptations, combined with techniques learned from Scout, Ranger, and Angel, had made him one of the most innovative K-9 officers in the country. His specialty had become what the team called partnership coordination, the ability to coordinate multiple K-9 units in complex operations that combined search and rescue with law enforcement techniques. Last month, when the Riverside School collapsed during an earthquake, traditional search and rescue protocols said we had maybe 4 hours to locate survivors in the rubble, Sarah reported. Rex coordinated a 9-dog search pattern that located 17 children in 90 minutes, children who would have died if we'd followed standard procedures. But the real breakthrough had come when Rex developed a technique that no police academy had ever taught: cross-species tactical communication. Working with the Midnight Brotherhood, Rex had learned to coordinate operations between different types of working dogs: search and rescue, police detection, military working dogs, and even therapy animals, creating integrated teams that could handle any crisis. The Morrison Ranch drug network we uncovered that night led to arrests across 7 states and the seizure of over $3 million in narcotics, Sarah continued. But more importantly, it led to the development of multi-K-9 investigation techniques that have revolutionized how we approach organized crime. The technique Rex had pioneered involved using different dogs' specialized abilities in coordinated sequence. Search and rescue dogs located hidden evidence, police dogs provided legal detection and arrest procedures, and military-trained dogs handled tactical security. The combination had proven so effective that federal law enforcement agencies were implementing Rex's protocols nationwide. But it was Emma Chen Thompson who provided the most important perspective on what the Brotherhood had accomplished. Now, 9 years old and thriving in her chosen family, Emma had become the unit's unofficial morale officer, providing psychological support to both human and canine members during their most challenging operations. "You know what I learned from watching Rex and the Brotherhood work together?" Emma asked the audience with the wisdom that came from her own survival story. "I learned that families aren't just people who rescue you. They're people who help you become strong enough to rescue other people." The audience, many of whom were struggling with their own experiences of loss, trauma, and the challenge of continuing to serve others despite personal pain, understood exactly what Emma meant. Rex was dying in that blizzard, but he didn't give up because he knew his partner Sarah needed him, Emma continued. Sarah was dying too, but she was willing to sacrifice herself to save Rex because that's what partners do. And Axel saved both of them because he learned that sometimes the best way to honor a partnership is to expand it. That evening, as the Brotherhood returned to Axel's Montana cabin, Sarah and Rex joined the family around the fireplace for their traditional evening harmony. For the first time since the blizzard, Rex added his voice to the Midnight Brotherhood's melodic song, not the alert bark of a police dog on duty, but the gentle, comforting sound of a family member who had found his place in something larger than any single partnership. "You know what ride with me really means?" Sarah asked Axel as they listened to 9 German shepherds harmonize around the warm fire. "What's that?" "It means that true partnerships don't end when the mission's over. They expand to include everyone who understands what it means to serve something bigger than yourself." Axel looked around at his chosen family. Emma, whose survival had taught them all about resilience, Scout, Ranger, and Angel, whose search and rescue expertise had saved hundreds of lives, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, and Echo, whose healing abilities had evolved into tactical excellence, and now Sarah and Rex, whose law enforcement experience had transformed the Brotherhood into something unprecedented. "Sarah," Axel replied, "I think what ride with me really means is that the best journeys are the ones where you refuse to travel alone, and the strongest partnerships are the ones that make room for everyone worth protecting." 9 voices continued their evening song, filling the Montana cabin with the sound that had once helped heal wounded warriors and now helped heal a wounded world. Because sometimes the greatest rescues aren't about pulling people from danger. Sometimes they're about creating partnerships so strong that danger doesn't stand a chance. And sometimes the most important words aren't "come with me" or "follow me." Sometimes they're "ride with me," an invitation to journey together towards something better than any of us could accomplish alone. For Sarah, Mitchell, and Rex, who proved that the strongest partnerships are those willing to die for each other and live for something greater. For every law enforcement officer who chooses integrity over corruption, courage over safety, and partnership over personal gain. For the Montana Multi-Species Law Enforcement Unit, where the only requirement for joining is the understanding that service means protecting everyone worth protecting. For the Midnight Brotherhood, whose greatest achievement wasn't saving lives, but creating a family strong enough to save everyone who needed saving. Welcome to a world where ride with me means riding toward justice, partnership, and the understanding that the best backup you can have is a family that chose you. One blizzard that buried corruption beneath courage. One partnership that proved loyalty is stronger than violence. One invitation, ride with me, that became the foundation for the strongest law enforcement family in Montana history. Sometimes the most dangerous storms create the clearest paths to justice. We want to hear what you felt while listening to this story. Don't forget to comment and rate the story out of 10.